25 to 50 million underinsured or uninsured people and plot them in a system that is stressed today without something happening. Innovative entrepreneurs are going to figure out ways to provide access to those people who might have it today, but are going to have worse access. Instead of seeing a doctor for 7 minutes, you might get to see one for 5 minutes. And people are going to say, enough, I want something different, I want something better. So, we see opportunities in lots of different areas out there, and its industries are changing. But it doesn't mean that's bad, that's good, because America is leading that change. And I think we need to just harness that and use our creativity, to drive these changes, not only in the U.S. industry, but make this a bigger export economy based on that.
To what extent is education an issue with starting a new company? I mean, a lot of these businesses are high-tech businesses, and there is a gap, I guess, in some of the high-tech skills and what we have now. And even the big companies are saying this. When you talk to the aerospace companies and people like that, they're saying they really need people with more high-tech skills. How do we get to that point? Anyone want to field that one?
Well, I'll jump in because Kauffman Foundation has spent lots of money on entrepreneurship education. When I say lots, just add zeros to it over the last 20 years or so. And this predates the time when I came there. Virtually all colleges today have a course in entrepreneurship. That's due to the Kauffman Foundation. We started this. And I will say this publicly, and it's something that my colleagues have said on public venues. We have now come to the conclusion, after sort of creating all these courses at all these universities, that maybe that's not the best way to teach entrepreneurship. That entrepreneurship is one of those things you learn by doing. And the most effective university programs, whether it's community college or four-year or out of the university setting in real life, are all out of the classroom experiences. They're either clubs, they're incubators, they're all kinds of organizations where people have a business idea and what they want to do, like you start a business and then you say, well, I need a website. And then how do I design a website? So what you do is you do a crash course and go figure out how to design a website. And then you realize, oh my God, I can do accounting. So you learn accounting literally in 2 or 3 days. All right, and then you realize, oh, I got to learn something else. There are all these forms I got to fill out, and et cetera, et cetera. But what you do as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure you can verify this, is that you learn things by being forced to do them, and not by sitting in a class for 3 months where the end product is a business plan that you'll never implement. And so the education thing is something, this is at Kauffman what we're experimenting with, a variety of out-of-the-classroom experiences. And it's kind of ironic, as I said, given where we started 20 years ago.
Well, you guys have worked with NIFTY, the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship as well, which is inner city kids, teaching them entrepreneurship. The only point I would add, more anecdotal, is I see a lot of kids that are entrepreneurial. Yeah. I think kids are by nature start out entrepreneurial and then it kind of gets crushed out of their spirit a little bit.
Yes, it does.
I mean, I don't know if it's been a trend or what, but I've seen like 8 or 9 stories in the last 2 months of kids getting shut down running a lemonade stand. I mean, come on, make them class president.
Right. But the root of your question was about the technical skills,
right,
of the kids out there today. And it's astounding when you think that 5% of our kids who get college degrees have a science, technology, engineering, or math degree. Mind-boggling. Okay, I'm a poet. I got an economics degree, so I'm one of the 95%. But it's 5%. And I have a 17-year-old son and a 12-year-old son, so I'm seeing them go through this. Fortunately, the older one is a real quant jock and loves computers and all that stuff. But my assessment on it is that this sort of pattern develops well before high school, certainly well before college. And the science, the math stuff is hard. There are black and white answers. You can't get by with a fancy essay and using lots of words and all that stuff. It's not cool on most campuses, and I hate to say, that's something that matters to teenagers, that they're, in the right courses with the right people. And it's not cool to be good with computers or be good with math or be good with science unless you're at TJ or the Bronx School for Science, or something like that. So we have some cultural issues that I think we've got to do to address that. But it's mind-boggling to think that in an information economy, which we've been in for 35 years right now, still 5% of our college graduates are getting STEM degrees. It's just mind-boggling to me.
Well, since I was answering anecdotally, I'll throw one more thing in there that we're observing. It's really, really tough for us to find folks who've got the work ethic and the integrity as well. I mean, we've run into several situations where we've caught people lying on their resume, et cetera, and it's, we've got pretty diligent procedures now because we've hired people in the past where they get in, and the work ethic's not there, or the ethics are a little vague too. So I think that's an area of challenge too. But I think you were talking about the opportunity for investment, for growing.
Yes, yeah, but I do want to get to one other point, which is about the raising money issue. And I want to talk a little bit about the financial regulation bill, which a lot of business groups have said has pointed out that there's a lot of regulatory uncertainty about that.
Yeah.
To what extent should entrepreneurs be concerned about that regulations in finance going forward?
Very.
Expound.
I've talked way too much on the panel, so I'll only speak up now if you call on me. The FinReg bill was was like I mentioned earlier, it got me involved. When I was sharing with other entrepreneurs, hey, do you guys realize what's going on? Your angel investors, did they matter to you? Yeah, we couldn't have started a business without them. Well, who were they? Oh yeah, I know them. They would not be able to invest in your company now. Some of them are successful entrepreneurs. They're starting to invest $100,000, $50,000 investments in small service companies, other businesses they believe in locally. They couldn't do that if the FinReg bill had been passed as originally conceived.
But it was fixed.
It was fixed in part. Some of the things that stuck in there were the home exclusion. You can't count the value of your home, but you can count the cost of your mortgage against your net worth. I mean, I know a lot of successful entrepreneurs who maybe got $2-3 million net worth, but they've got a pretty nice home. Can't count that home. So there's things in there that it's still got some bumps that I'd like to see gone. That's just from that standpoint. I know there's a lot more you'd probably want to address, John.
I'd ask the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
On the
I mean,
panel.
just from going through it, I think that, and I did this 3 years ago, going on 3 years ago, it was just very hard to get people to write checks. They'd say, look, I believe you, but I'm just not willing to take the risk because it's just too much. The cost benefit's just not there for me. And I've seen that open up in some states where they have some incentives to cut checks for people at a seed level and to get things going. So I think that being able to loosen up that capital, to be able to get more money flowing in to younger companies at a very early stage, it's only going to give more companies the ability to go into a formal Series A round or a VC round, and then you can go after debt financing, and then banks would open up. So it's a challenge that I see, and I speak all the time in Michigan at various entrepreneurial summits. I went to one about mobile app developers this week, and that was the big question, is like, how do I get money to do this? How do I, I'm at the point now where we're seeing some revenue, but I can't hire, I can't grow, I can't go after this new business I want to go after without bringing people in. And there's so many people that are on unemployment that want jobs, but I can't afford to pay them more than unemployment pays to bring them in. So, I mean, that's a very big problem we see in Michigan specifically, again, from my view of it. But being able to have angels cutting checks is the very first step, and it lays the foundation for innovation in this country. If you can't do that, then everything else is like a domino effect, just going to fall.
But I'll bet you don't have the problem that he has in terms of hiring people, do you?
Sorry?
You were talking about the problems that you have hiring good people.
Right.
You don't have that problem, do you?
We do have some challenges.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, the challenges that we face is really about like tech, and it's not cool to be an entrepreneur right now. And I think that's starting to change.
Why
But
is
a lot,
it not?
I just think that in general, you graduate with an engineering degree, and I'm an engineer, and you're told to go work for a company where you make your salary per year and you get your 4 weeks of paid vacation, and it is what it is. And for good engineers to say, I'm going to go take a risk, or I'm going to follow what you're believing, they want to know that you're going to be able to pay their salary for at least a couple or 3 years, which is very hard to show, to pull somebody out of a high-tech job, or they're looking for a visa, which we can't offer. So
Actually, but the reason I've run the same Craigslist ad in the Washington area and the Detroit area, and I get like one person in the Washington area is not qualified. We get over 100. Former engineers from GM. I mean, there's an abundance of talent, highly skilled talent in the Detroit area that's just waiting to be hired.
Well, the thing is, I actually know Todd Palmer, who you probably know from your network. We're rolling out a nationwide CFO service, and I've had at least 3 concrete examples where I've spoken to somebody who's been referred to me, who would not start doing bookkeeping controller work because they're on unemployment.
I've gotten that too. And
So,
by the way,
it's like, are you kidding me?
in 2 situations, I have not hired people because they said, could you hire me after my unemployment runs out?
That gets back to the
'Cause
ethics thing.
That's a pure ethical issue, and it goes to the
Yeah.
incentives the unemployment situation now has.
But my point would be, if the legislation and the policies encourage people down that path, you're encouraging them to make that kind of ethical choice as opposed to
I don't know
out there
the
and be
answer. I
relying
know
on
the
themselves.
problem it creates. I mean, that's all.
I want to see if anybody from the audience has any questions. Anyone? Sure.
A lot of
I've heard some about the trend, maybe this is a question for John or maybe Jake, of a lot of the startups moving towards acquisitions as opposed to an IPO.
Yeah.
Have you seen that trend? Do you think it's a good or bad trend, and are there reasons for it?
Yes,
Or
yes,
what are the
yes, yes, and yes. So first of all, over the last 10 years, there's been a huge trend from exits from venture-backed portfolios. You know, it used to be, you know, round numbers maybe, you know, 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 good exits, meaning companies that were successful, not the ones that were unsuccessful. We have a lot of those. 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 went public. You know, now it's maybe 1 out of 10. I mean, it's a dramatic change. You know, the IPO market, you know, used to have, you know, 40, 50, 100 good IPOs a year. Now it's got, you know, dozens, you know, in good years. So a lot of things have caused that. You know, Starbucks raised the cost of going public. The investment banks, you know, I think are a big part of the problem. So what happened with the investment banks is, you know, they went from private partnerships to public entities, and then all of a sudden, the investment banking side, the fee income from the investment banks was dwarfed by the proprietary trading income. So the proprietary traders took over the investment banks from a management perspective. And you know what's happened now is they basically say, look, we're not going to do this public offering unless you know you can raise $100 million and we can make 7% of that and make a $7 million fee on it. At the same time, the Fidelities and all the money managers of the world, their funds are so big out there that if you went back to the 1980s, you know, and you looked at the public offering of Microsoft or Sun or Oracle or Apple, these weren't $150, $250 million offerings. These were $25, $50 million public stock offerings done by 4 firms out in the Valley or out in San Francisco that don't exist anymore. You know, Hambrecht Quist, Robertson Stevens, Montgomery Securities, you know, the 4 horsemen out there. So we've had a lot of structural changes. So M&A exits, I think they're good for us when they happen, but we don't make as much money off of them. And I also think it's not great for American industry to have fewer big companies being born. And you know, you don't want to have, one big database company out there. You don't want to have one big computer manufacturer out there. You just don't want to have concentration in so much, in any one industry and any one company. So I think it's a real problem for the future of this business to have, our successful companies being bought because they can't go public.
And can I just jump in one thing? I don't want to dominate, but go to our website at www.kauffman.org. There's a study that we released last week that I wrote with our chief investment officer called Choking the Recovery, why companies aren't going public. And in addition to fingering Starbucks, we focus on ETFs. And I won't spare you the long sermon, it's in the document, but we think that ETFs have actually, especially ETFs that hold illiquid small companies, small cap stocks, have actually made it less desirable for companies to go public, and the document will speak for itself. You'll see it on the website. It got a lot of news coverage last week.
Anyone else? Sure.
So there's a lot of agreement on the panel on a number of issues. It's great. I actually agree. But there are a lot of things that happen on the Hill that encourage groupthink of some nature. And I think a lot of people maybe are not particularly interested in trying to break out of that for any number of reasons. It's difficult for staff to do. It's difficult for ideas to be brought forward. It's really hard to convince your boss. It's really hard to
Yeah.